Canada's counter tariffs on steel, aluminum and autos will remain in place, but as of September 1st, tariffs on all the U.S. goods that are CUSMA compliant will be removed.
Canada has a lot of cards, their most important customer in critical industries.
In Washington and Ottawa, trade once again defines political power. President Donald Trump is pushing tariff pressure across key sectors, especially metals and autos. Canada has answered with a targeted adjustment. Starting September 1st, Ottawa will remove retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods that comply with the USMCA. Countermeasures on steel, aluminum, and automobiles remain in place. Some read this as a retreat. The better reading is a tactical reset designed to narrow the fight to the sectors that matter most.
Right. And look, the Prime Minister, I think I saw in the news conference, answered the question that because we believe there is an opportunity in the coming weeks to come to a bilateral deal with the United States that will put us in a better position than we're in this evening.
Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc insists Canada is not surrendering leverage. On the contrary, he stresses that Canada still has many cards to play. The reasoning is straightforward. Canada is the single largest customer for American goods in several critical industries. Every day, Canadian imports support U.S. farmers, energy suppliers, and manufacturers. Beyond trade flows, Canadian pension funds hold more than $1 trillion in American assets and could expand those investments by another $100 billion annually. On top of that, Canada's role in energy and minerals cannot be understated. The United States still relies on Canadian oil for nearly 4 million barrels per day and on Canadian uranium for over a quarter of its supply. These are not minor statistics. They are central to North America's economy. By narrowing its counter tariffs, Ottawa is not discarding leverage. It is consolidating around the tools that matter most, the ones Washington cannot easily ignore. This shift has triggered a debate. Critics argue that Canada is giving in too quickly, pointing to earlier concessions on the digital services tax, on defense commitments, and even on border enforcement. They worry that every concession emboldens Trump to ask for more. Yet a growing number of independent voices see it differently. Former finance advisors and political analysts describe the move as a good step, even a necessary one. Their reasoning is anchored in the lived experience of Canadian households and small businesses. Tariffs have raised costs on food, clothing, and basic imports. Removing them eases the squeeze on families already dealing with inflation. The Canadian Federation of Independent Business reported 2 years ago that retaliatory tariffs were hurting medium and small firms the most. Now, many of those same businesses may finally feel some relief. At the same time, the government has taken away an argument Trump often uses that Canada does not respect the very agreement it signed. With an executive order, Washington confirmed that USMCA-compliant goods would remain tariff-free. By aligning with that order, Ottawa strengthens its credibility rather than weakening it. The true test lies in the sectoral tariffs that remain untouched. American duties on steel and aluminum are hitting Quebec and Ontario especially hard, and the auto tariffs are already straining assembly lines. These are the industries where integration across North America is deepest. They are also the areas where Trump's position is toughest. For decades, he has argued that automobiles should be built inside the United States and nowhere else. That belief will make the auto file the most contentious of all. Still, Canada has not walked into the room empty-handed. Its energy exports underpin U.S. electricity grids and refineries. Its minerals are essential for new technologies. Its role in continental supply chains gives it a weight that no executive order can erase. By lifting tariffs on USMCA goods, Carney has lowered tensions at home, reduced costs for consumers, and cleared the table for focused negotiations on the sectors that matter most. Trump remains the dominant figure, but Canada has chosen patience and preparation over escalation. The contest is now set between Trump's pressure politics and Carney's strategic patience. The outcome will shape not only the next stage of U.S.-Canada relations, but the foundation of the North American economy itself.
Prime Minister Mark Carney spoke with U.S. President Donald Trump on the phone today, weeks after blowing past the August 1st deadline for a trade deal.
The leaders discussed current trade challenges, opportunities, and shared priorities in a new economic and security relationship between Canada and the U.S. The leaders
After weeks of silence, Prime Minister Mark Carney and President Donald Trump finally spoke by phone. Ottawa described the conversation as substantive and productive, focused on trade challenges, new economic priorities, and Ukraine. Washington gave no statement, reinforcing the sense of imbalance. Still, the fact that they spoke matters. It was the first contact since Trump's August 1st deadline passed without a deal, triggering a 35% tariff on Canadian goods outside CUSMA and a 50% duty on steel and aluminum. The call comes as Trump pushes a disruptive style of negotiation. Earlier this month, the United States extended 50% tariffs not only on metals, but on more than 400 industrial products containing steel, from cranes to rail cars, even though these items were nominally covered under CUSMA. The message was unmistakable. Trump is willing to stretch rules and keep the threat of leaving CUSMA on the table. But tariffs bring costs at home. Walmart recently warned of higher prices feeding through supply chains. In April, the Yale Budget Lab estimated that the 2025 tariff package would raise U.S. consumer prices by 2.3%, equal to about $3,800 per household using 2024 prices. In July, the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco projected that if tariffs remain high, U.S. real incomes could decline by about 0.4% by 2028. The Center for Automotive Research in Michigan also cautioned that a 25% tariff on autos and parts could add $108 billion to industry costs this year. These figures show that disruption abroad is also a strain at home. For Canada, the challenge is immense, but it is not helpless. Carney has resisted calls to match Trump's every move, choosing instead a strategy of patience while holding on to powerful cards. Energy remains the most obvious. In 2024, Canada exported close to 4 million barrels of crude oil per day to the United States, by far America's largest source of imports. Natural gas shipments were more than 8 billion cubic feet per day, and Canada supplied roughly 27% of all uranium used in U.S. nuclear power plants. These are dependencies that Washington cannot easily replace. Canada also holds an advantage in critical minerals. Nickel, cobalt, and rare earth elements mined north of the border are essential for electric vehicles and defense supply chains. And despite the new tariffs, about 85% of bilateral trade still moves duty-free under CUSMA, giving Canadian exporters a core of stability while disputes play out. Ottawa has also been selective in retaliation. In March, it applied 25% tariffs on 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of American goods, targeting consumer products like beverages, food items, and motorcycles, pressure points designed to hit politically sensitive constituencies in the United States.
The readout also says Carney and Trump agreed to talk again soon.
Looking forward, 3 paths are possible. One is a framework similar to those signed with the UK, Japan, and South Korea, where tariffs were capped around 10 to 15% in exchange for investment pledges and purchases. Another is for Canada to use energy and minerals more directly in talks, offering stable access in return for tariff relief. A third is legal and structural, from pursuing cases under CUSMA and the WTO to diversifying exports toward Europe and Asia. None of these paths guarantee immediate relief, but they underline that Canada is not without leverage. Trump remains central, but Carney has shown he will not rush into a bad deal. The recent call did not solve the trade standoff, yet it marked the beginning of the next phase, where endurance and strategy will decide how North America's 2 closest partners manage one of their most volatile economic relationships in decades.
The Trump administration expanding tariffs on steel and aluminum imports on Monday. The move adds a 50% tariff rate on more than 400 goods with steel and aluminum components.
It's going to mean higher canned food prices across the board for American consumers.
In mid-August, the White House dropped another surprise. Tariffs on steel and aluminum did not just double from 25 to 50% earlier this summer. They now cover more than 400 additional goods that contain these metals. Importers had no grace period. Products already on ships heading toward U.S. ports were instantly more expensive the moment the policy took effect. The list is long and familiar: wires and cables, car parts, home appliances, electronics, even soda cans, items that millions of Americans use every single day. For consumers, it means higher bills. For companies, it means uncertainty, because no one knows which category of goods might be targeted next. This sudden expansion shows how fast trade policy under President Trump can reshape the ground under households and industries alike. The impact is already visible in the numbers. According to the Producer Price Index released in late July, the price of domestic steel mill products was nearly 9% higher than a year earlier. Aluminum was up more than 13%. These are not abstract figures. They are costs that flow straight into the price tags of cars, refrigerators, and packaged food on grocery store shelves. Factories across the Midwest are feeling the strain.
Primary aluminum is something that's always going to be imported into the United States, no matter what kind of tariffs you put on whatever it is.
Manufacturers that rely on imported aluminum face higher costs, and they point out that certain types are not produced in the United States, so the tariffs add expense without offering a local alternative. Smaller firms cannot absorb the increases the way global corporations can. As they scale back, entire communities lose the stable jobs that have sustained American families for decades. Instead of sparking a manufacturing boom, the tariffs are placing new pressure on the very towns they were meant to protect. Across the border, Canada has been moving in the opposite direction.
We must reinforce our strength at home. Canada will be introducing a series of countermeasures to protect Canadian steel and aluminum workers and producers.
Ottawa responded quickly when Washington first raised tariffs earlier this year. By March, Canada had imposed its own 25% counter tariffs on about 30 billion Canadian dollars worth of U.S. goods, covering steel, aluminum, and a wide range of consumer products. But Canada did not stop there. It introduced tariff rate quotas that limit how much foreign steel can enter the country, and expanded procurement rules so that only Canadian firms or trusted partners can bid on government projects requiring steel and aluminum. The government also prepared financial support for major aluminum producers if U.S. tariffs remain in place, ensuring that companies like Rio Tinto can maintain operations and jobs. This approach has a clear goal. While tariffs raise costs, Canada is using the moment to strengthen its domestic industry, protect workers, and stabilize supply chains. Ottawa is signaling that it will not simply accept American pressure. It is defending its own market while keeping its industrial core intact. The contrast is striking. In the United States, tariffs were sold as a promise to bring jobs back and make industry stronger. Yet the evidence so far points in the other direction. Higher steel and aluminum costs are feeding into inflation, squeezing companies and forcing layoffs at manufacturing firms that rely on imported metals. For American households, everyday purchases from canned food to family cars are becoming more expensive. Canada, meanwhile, has acted quickly and decisively to protect its own producers. Rather than being cornered, it has turned the trade shock into an opportunity to reinforce its industry. The result is a tale of two strategies. One is creating turbulence for consumers and manufacturers at home. The other is building resilience in the face of pressure. This is the test of tariff politics. Pushed too far, short-term protection ends up hurting the very workers it promised to defend. Trump's trade policy now shows how protection can backfire, raising costs at home while unsettling global commerce.